Welcome to this week's video. Last week had some nice little lapel mic action going on, but I actually broke it. So we're back to device sound at the moment, but I'll tidy it up as best as I can. But I thought for this time I'll round up the series I was doing on Myst, and I'm going to skip a few of the games straight over to a game called Myst Online. So is a game that came out, and the idea behind it is that it takes players from all over the world and they all get together and they solve Myst style puzzles, and it works out very, very well. A lot of people won't have heard of it. Now I blame in the UK was the lack of marketing, because although I knew it was coming out because I was a fan of Myst, I was just waiting for the next Myst game to come out. There was nothing in the shops, there was no advertising whatsoever. When it came out, all there was sort of on the shelves lower down, there was a few Euro games. And that was slightly annoying because the idea behind it was such a good idea. And it got coined the phrase MMORPG, or MMORPG. And it stood for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. Now if I'd have heard of that straight off the back, I'd have been like, role-playing, because... But, in the same vein, you're playing a game which in its title is Euro. So it was full of people either just playing the game, trying to solve puzzles, working together, exploring, and Cyan kept opening up new areas because the whole idea behind it was there was these people called the Dunny, and they were coming back in and people from the surface were coming down and sort of excavating. And so the game was evolving, areas were opening up, people were exploring more and more puzzles, and that slowed down for reasons which I'll come to in a bit. So there was all that going on and people were sort of playing as themselves, but there were people doing the role-playing element and sort of taking on a persona, another person that they'd created, which as somebody playing the game was always a little bit off-putting to me, because you didn't know whether you were talking to a genuine person. You figured out eventually, but you didn't know whether you were talking to a genuine person or whether you were talking to somebody pretending to be a person. And they, on the other hand, would get annoyed, and you could tell they were getting annoyed with you when they were talking to you, because you weren't playing along with their story. You weren't accepting their character that they'd spent, I'm guessing, a while creating. And I couldn't do it. I had a go at talking to them in character with them, obviously me playing me, and I just gave up. I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the skill of doing it. Now for all intents and purposes it is just another Myst game, so it came out as standalone as well, and you could go around, bar a few little changes to the puzzles to make them more cooperative. The single player game was pretty much the same, but it was a Myst game, and then when you had the cooperative element in there, it just added a whole new level to it. And the publishers didn't seem to understand that. They had this sort of this game coming out from Cyan, and it's from Cyan World, so they thought it'd be a big seller. They wouldn't have to do much in the way of marketing, and they didn't seem to grasp what they had. And so that was then dropped by Ubisoft. And then another game company called GameTap took over, and they were a little bit like Steam, so they were trying to do that sort of thing, and they were really successful. It was their top grossing game on their network. It was doing really, really well. There were new players coming all the time, but then they eventually dropped it because it wasn't in the genre of game that they were wanting to adopt. It wasn't where they saw their target audience, although it was their target audience because it was their best-selling game. They didn't seem to see it that way, and it brings it sort of onto the modern day now, where Euro is an open source game where there's little bits of content every now and again added in by other people. It seems to be checked a little bit by Cyan, which is good. I'm all for that because the sort of history was built up in game and the character of the world. It's quite nice that it's adhered to, and that they're a fan of the game and the fans are a fan of the game, and sort of working together to try and get something done, even though the game is now sort of being developed on sort of a funded by the fans basis. It's still a very, very good game. There's still work going on into it, but obviously people have to hold down jobs, so work going on into it is a little bit slow. But it's good, and it's a shame that the game doesn't have as much publicity, or didn't have as much publicity at the time of launch, because I think if it had have done, if Ubisoft had put the time into advertising, put some sort of information out, I don't know, on video online, at the time probably more on television, I think it could have been a really, really popular game, especially coming from Cyan, and it is a bit of a pity. So I'm now going to go on to a section where I'm just going to talk about what to expect if you do download Myst Online. So you can do that from mystonline.com, and then you go to, I think there's a bit that says play, and then you've also got forums, a bit of news, a bit of information on the site as well about it. But then when you download it, the graphics are, they're not the latest, so they're not Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon or anything like that, because it's not a brand new game. But what Cyan do well is they take the limitations of the technology at the time and they make it look polished and nice, and some of it looks absolutely stunning. And that's purely because Cyan are really, really good at doing that, and they know what they're doing. So you start in the game and you're in the Arizona desert, I think it is, I don't know, I'm not from America. A desert, and every desert in America to me is the Arizona desert. So you start off there, and you've got this world to explore, and when you get into this sort of cavernous city area, you'll meet other people there and they'll be able to help you with puzzles and give you nudges and hints and pointers. So that's really the idea behind the game, is the sense of community, finding out things for yourselves. Bring a notepad, obviously with your computer, so you can write down sort of ideas and figure out puzzles and things like that, because you will still need to do that. It's a Myst game. So you'll need to do that, but then you've got other bits where you'll have to figure things out with people, and you'll be able to chat to them and sort of get through the puzzles that way. And it's worthwhile. The storyline is very good. The sort of the history that they put into the game, the in-game history, as I sort of alluded to earlier, is rather good as well. So if you like the idea of a game where the story is very deep, where you have to figure out the story for yourself, obviously there are elements that are told through it because it wouldn't be a story. But it's a very good story. It comes from Cyan, as always. So that really brings me on to the end of the video. There's a few more Myst games I could have spoken about. So there was, after Myst 2, there was Myst 3 Exile by Presto Studios. And then you had Myst 4 Revelation. It just seemed like somebody trying to do a Myst-like game. And some of it just really broke you away from the story. So there was elements which looked really nice, and it was still point and click, but you could look all around you. But then they tried to include some 3D elements into that as well, like 3D fog. And in some places it worked, but in other places it looked like there was a sort of flat wedge of cloud just slicing through the treetops and things like that, and it just brought you out of the reality of it. And low polygon animals, and even for the time, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that came out, and for the time it just looked really low polygon. It looked worse in terms of graphics in places than Riven did, and Riven came out many years ago. And so Myst 4 for me, I have no interest in talking about it. I never really finished that either because I couldn't, I didn't engage with it, I didn't find it interesting. I could have talked about Myst 5, but Myst 5 really came out of Uru, and so there were these other games going on, and Cyan wanted to wrap up the story of Myst, and Uru had happened, and so they used the engine that they used to make Uru, upgraded it, polished it, brought out Myst 5. Myst 5 looked stunning. Good storyline, good game. It was a little bit more mystic, I guess, than a Myst storyline normally is. But it worked because they actually included a reason for it in the story well, and you just sort of overlooked it because it did fit in. And so Myst 5, I guess I could have covered. It was a very good game, the story was good, the ideas in it were solid all the way through, and it did bring closure to the Myst franchise. So really on that note I'm going to end it. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's not I know it's not the best, probably the best series on the Myst universe, because it is literally, as you'll see, the first attempt I've been sort of doing at sort of getting into YouTube and getting started. So I'm trying my best, I'm trying to get there. Please support me, please subscribe if you can, and like and all that YouTubey jazz. But yeah, so I'll see you next time. As I said last week, I didn't know what I was going to talk about this week, but I felt I should finish this off. Next week I'm not sure at all what to talk about, because I did have this in the back of my head as a possibility. So next week we'll see what happens. I'll try and make it fun, I'll try and make it interesting. In the future, if people do have ideas for comments and people start commenting, please comment and give me ideas of things that you want me to talk about in relation to videos that I make in the future. Anyway, see you next week. Bye.